News First Investigates. I'm Sierra Cummings, and this is Andy Parati next to me. How are you doing, Andy?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. We've got another story today in your series that is called Taxation Through Citation. What is this particular story about?
Yeah, so this is a follow-up to an investigation that we did over the summer involving a town called the city of Lenox, and it's in South Georgia, and we found that about over 70% of the entire city's revenue came from traffic citations.
That's incredible.
It's this small little city, less than 2 square miles long, that runs along Interstate 75. And after the story aired, a couple months later, we found out that the state did something, and here's what they found. When we first met Lenox City Mayor Henry Baker in June, he felt passionate that drivers who speed should be held accountable.
If they are breaking the law,
by its police department.
they take an oath to uphold the law.
An Atlanta News First investigation uncovered the city has now been found in violation of the law itself. 27 days after this city council meeting, the Georgia Department of Public Safety suspended Lenox's speed detection device permits for 180 days, meaning its officers cannot write speeding tickets for nearly 6 months. State investigators writing the city consistently altered tickets that had the effect of excluding the fines and forfeitures for citations issued for speeding, making it appear Lenox officers wrote fewer speeding citations than they actually did.
Abuse of power.
Abuse of power.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Charlie Johnson got a speeding ticket in Lenox earlier this year. He says he didn't deserve.
My response to that was I felt used.
According to state investigators, after officers ticketed drivers for speeding, the city often changed citations to unsafe driving. That practice allowed the city to circumvent a state law that caps revenue from speeding fines at 35% of a police department's budget. After the Georgia Department of Public Safety audited the city, it discovered Lenox generated nearly 40% from speeding citations last year. Records show the city altered Charlie's speeding ticket, too. Knowing what you know now, do you question whether your speeding ticket was legitimate?
Oh, I know it wasn't legitimate. Yeah, I never had a question about whether it was legitimate.
The state's response follows an Atlanta News First investigation which uncovered Lenox relies on the profit from its police force more than any other city in the state. In 2022, it collected $1.3 million from fines and forfeitures. That's nearly 73% of the town's budget. For a city of about 800 people that covers less than 2 square miles along Interstate 75. We asked the mayor about that revenue in June. With so much revenue coming from traffic citations, some question, what's the real motive? Safety or raising revenue?
Stop no one unless they're doing over 90 miles an hour up there.
It's hard to hear, but Mayor Baker told us officers only ticket drivers who speed more than 90 miles per hour. During a hearing this past August with the Georgia Department of Public Safety, Lenox Police Chief Shane Daughtry claimed the ticket alterations were an accident.
This is just honestly an honest mistake. I did not monitor it. I did not keep up with it. It's on me. It's my fault.
State investigators at the hearing said the practice seemed intentional.
And another concern we had, if you don't mind, Colonel, is 85% of your revenue was speed-based. Only 1 ticket in 3 years was not written on the interstate for speeding in a 3-year period. That tells me there's not a whole lot of enforcement going on other than the interstate.
There's not a whole lot going on in Lenox other than that.
A South Georgia Police Department in a whole lot of trouble, accused of making too much cash off the backs of drivers.
I felt very abused, taken advantage of, and that's not a comfortable feeling for anybody.
So, Andy, this is a really big deal. They were essentially altering tickets.
Yeah, and this does not happen very often. What I mean by that, the state doesn't take action often on cities doing this sort of stuff. In fact, over the past 5 years, I think it's only happened one other time. This city will eventually be allowed to write speeding tickets again.
Okay.
Their suspension ends towards the end of December, just a few days after Christmas.
And I'm sure the state might be watching with a closeful eye.
Right, and there will be audits that will be conducted to make sure that they're following the law.
What's been the city's response after this particular story in the series aired?
So at first, it was crickets. We didn't hear anything from the city. And keep in mind, we're based in Atlanta, you and I,
Yeah.
our investigative unit is. Lenox is 3 hours south
Kinda far
in
out,
South
yep.
Georgia. And I'm thinking maybe the city is just ignore us until I got an email from the police chief. And the police chief saying, I'm letting you know I resigned back in August. And that's important because here's the sort of the timeline. The state, Georgia Highway Patrol, or Georgia State Public Safety, they're the ones that, in a letter in July, they said, hey, we're suspending you. We found out that you were altering tickets. And then they had a hearing a month later. In between that time, my story aired, the original story that I did on Lenox. And then at that hearing, he's there, and he essentially falls on the sword and he says, "This is my mess up." And
Wow.
then you can hear a state investigator, as you just heard in the story, essentially say, "Well, we think it may be intentional." Well, it was a few weeks after that hearing is when he resigned, and I wanted to know at that point, did other officers resign?
yeah.
Like, what's going to happen? Because, I mean, losing the ability to write tickets in that city is going to hurt them financially. When 73% of your entire city's revenue comes from traffic citations, that's going to hit hard. So
Yeah.
turns out there are still officers on the police force. Another one also resigned during that time. But it's going to be a financial challenge for that city. This does not prevent the police department from writing any tickets. This just prevents them from using their speed detection camera, that radar gun. They can still pull people over for other infractions, but as that investigator in the story mentioned in the story, is that in the, I think, 3 to 5 years, they only pulled one person over in the city limits for speeding. Every single one of them for the past 3 to 5 years has been on the interstate. That very small little piece
Strip,
of
that little strip, yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
That's incredible
Yeah.
perspective there. So I know, just because I'm nosy and I try to look at every single email that comes to the newsroom, it seems to be like an overwhelming response from people saying, like, hey, this is not a one-off. Like, this is something similar has happened to me. So what's been the public's reaction
Yeah.
after the story aired?
People were like, it happened to me. Like, I got so many emails of people asking me to investigate their own small town police department from across the state. It was kind of insane. Like, I woke up the next morning after the story aired, and I must have received like 15 emails, just and some of them like providing backup documents and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity to investigate every single one of them, which is why a state lawmaker believes that there should be a law in the books capping the amount of revenue that cities can collect, not just from speeding, but from all traffic citations. It doesn't prevent officers from writing tickets. That money still goes to state coffers, but there's less incentive for pulling people over. So yeah, this struck a nerve with a lot of people.
It definitely did, me included there. All right, well, be safe on the roads, Andy,
Yes,
and
absolutely,
to our
yeah.
viewers and listeners as well. We know you'll stay on top of the taxation through citation. Great reporting. You have been watching and listening to Behind the Investigation with Atlanta News First Investigates. Be sure to watch and listen to all of our other podcasts wherever you get yours: Spotify, YouTube, Apple. We're everywhere. Thanks so much for joining us.